I can hear the voice. About 4:05 p.m. this evening, we received a phone call to respond to the 1000 block of 33rd Street Southeast here in Ruskin, Florida, from a mental health counselor who asked us to check on Sean Porter in regards to the individual that was making suicidal threats. Our deputy responded, and to no avail, was able to make any contact with anyone and left the scene. About 5:40 p.m. this evening, our 911 call center received several different 911 calls from individuals. One being the subject, Sean Porter's father, calling us saying that he was threatening himself and others around him. One phone call even said that he had fired a gunshot towards one of the victims that we have made contact with. There was even another phone call that said that there was an adult male and an adult female that was with him, and they were forced to go inside a barn behind the house because they were being held against their will. So for a little while, it was an extremely tense situation because we didn't exactly know what we had here. Made contact with the victim, and he showed us on his arm that he suffered from a minor laceration. We believe now that the situation is over, that he was struck with some type of shrapnel or glass, that our suspect did fire a firearm through the metal shed. So whether it was a piece of the aluminum from the metal shed or some glass panes that were stacked up against the shed, at some point our victim was struck in the right arm, and where it caused fortunate for him, a minor laceration. Our negotiators negotiated for almost 4 hours with this violent and very irrational subject. At times, he said he was coming out guns blazing. At times, he said he wanted to die by suicide. At times, he was talking that he had sovereign immunity and didn't need to comply with any type of state authorities, that he would only comply and talk to someone that was from any type of federal agency. So I have to tell you, as a sheriff and as a community, we can't be more grateful or more impressed with these negotiators that were able, after 4 hours, to take this very irrational and violent subject, and they were able to obtain a peaceful resolution. Our subject did finally exit the residence, and he was placed under arrest for his warrant that we had obtained for aggravated battery with a firearm. So he is now in custody. We are now in the stages where we're interviewing the other two witnesses, victims. Not exactly sure what they are, who were inside the barn, to figure out if they were being held against their will, if they weren't, and what role they played in all of this. No firearm has been recovered yet. We were told that he owns 2 firearms. We were told by a witness that yes, he did discharge a firearm from inside to outside this barn / shed that's behind the house. We're waiting for a search warrant. We had an arrest warrant for his arrest. We're waiting for a search warrant now. So that'll be phase 2, what we do here, along with the interviews, to go inside and see if we end up indeed recovering a firearm that we believe caused this damage to the barn, but ultimately this, again, fortunately, minor laceration to a victim that we've been in contact with.
Sheriff, can you tell us any idea, was he in a home and these other 2 people in a barn, or was he in the barn, or how were they?
Yeah. This started outside. Some type of argument started with 4 adults. At some point, he retreated inside this barn area, this shed that he had, and took the 2 other adult subjects along with him. Discharged this firearm, and again, luckily he wasn't struck with a bullet, but was struck with some type of shrapnel, causing a minor laceration instead of something more serious that we could have been talking about this evening.
What does this say about the importance of not only mental health counseling, but having mental health staff on hand to respond to this kind of event and to be able to interact with somebody who's in a volatile situation?
I think the only reason we have a peaceful solution here this evening is because our crisis negotiators are trained with a lot of mental health training, that 80 hours, the additional advanced training that they have, and we continue to provide them. There's no doubt in my mind it was their training this evening that resulted in a peaceful resolution for all parties involved here this evening.
Do you know, in terms of the people who were, involved in threats being made, were there relationships between them? Were these people who were very well known to one another?
Yes, they all know one another. Apparently our victim has some type of intimate relationship with one of the females. They were arguing this evening. Again, this resulted then in some type of violence towards her boyfriend. So don't exactly know how this played out. We're trying to piece that together now. We have everyone separated and trying to figure that out now.
But we're not, at this point, you're not calling the other two people that were there hostages?
No, so far they're being held, preliminary interviews that are being conducted. They said that they were free to go, and he wasn't holding them against their will, that they were scared to come outside. They were frightened to come outside. Matter of fact, I was told later on as we were in the command post going through negotiations that they were upset that we wouldn't just leave, and they were talking to some of the news stations, saying that they didn't want to come out, that we were the ones placing them in fear for their life, not the individual who just discharged a firearm inside the barn.
Is that the main charge right now, discharging the gun, right?
Yes, yeah, the charge is the felony charge, the warrant that we obtained for discharging that firearm, that aggravated battery with a firearm. Even though a bullet didn't strike him, that bullet caused something else to strike him.
Last question. Does Sean Porter have a history of mental illness or any kind of criminal history? I know you said that a mental health counselor is the one who made that first call, right?
He does. He has a violent history, some domestic violence, false imprisonment, and he also has a history of some mental illness issues.
And do you know
Do you
why?
have Sean Porter's spelling?
Yep, I'll give it to you.
Do you allow to have a weapons here?
We're still figuring that out. As far as we can determine, he's not a convicted felon. He is able to own firearms, but again, we'll determine that. We will put his criminal history out. We'll have our public affairs office put that out exactly with what he's being charged tonight as well.
Do you know why they didn't make contact the first time? Were they no longer home, or were they hiding in the home?
Yeah, we were told that no one was home, that no one, if they were being quiet, not answering the door. The deputy knocked on a bunch of doors and windows trying to make contact. Obviously, when our licensed mental health care practitioners calls and said they're worried about somebody, we're going to exhaust all means trying to get that individual before they can cause harm to themselves or someone else. So I don't know if they weren't home and came later on, or if they were home and didn't want us to come into contact with them. That's a great question.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
sir.
Good to see you. How you been? Doing good? Good, man.
Good to see you. How are you?